Welcome to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color, the last show of Black History Month, right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena and which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
Follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, too, you can catch any of our 5 live shows, including this one, Second City Sports. If you happen to miss them, you can watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Once again, make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. And speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can follow them on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sports Zone Chicago. Once again, at Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to catch up the podcast version of this program, Second City Sports, you can do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including that iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. You ready? WARR on Anchor. One more again, as you kids would say. WARR on Anchor. And you can follow War Media on all social media platforms at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very different opinions. And you have an opinion about any of our topics that we're going to cover today during our 2-hour extravaganza. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions and comments in the comment section. Look in and we'll get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll or disrespect or just do something stupid, Lakeena, give Lakeena the full permission to give you the bill and be a boot.
Goodbye.
I love when I say that. One of our main topics coming up on today's show, we'll talk about the MLB lockout. Today is quote-unquote D-Day, regarded by the owners of Major League Baseball. They're forcing the players to come up, agree on the deal today. If anything happens during this 2-hour extravaganza, we'll let you know before we check up out of here. Right now, they are still talking, which is a very good sign. We were talking about this before we went on live, Lakeena. We'll see what happens. The last few days have been productive, quote unquote, but we'll see what happens going on. If anything happens down there in the state of Florida regarding to this lockout, we'll give you the latest news on that situation. Lakeena, let's kick off our number 1 of Second City Sports here in Sports Zone Chicago by discussing the Chicago Bulls. The 39 and now 22 Chicago Bulls, their 6-game winning streak was snapped as the Memphis Grizzlies came to the UC on Saturday night and destroyed the Chicago Bulls despite the final score, 116-110. John Morant, your underground candidate for MVP, poured in 46 points, including a couple of spectacular plays. DeMar DeRozan led the Bulls with 31, even though he struggled through most of that game. Zach LaVine did his thing as he had 28 points on 9 and 19 shooting, including 3 from three-point range. But Lakeena, as we break down this game, I saw something that has been a problem all year, and it continued and it got exposed again on Saturday night. In particular, John Morant. He darted through the middle like it was no one's business, and no one's to see. I'm not saying do any rough play here, but the Bulls decided just to let him go through and score at will, along with other players as well, Jaren Jackson Jr. and others, just go down the middle with no regard for stopping him. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Well, this is when you don't have Caruso, who's your defensive stopper. You don't have Lonzo Ball, who can, defend up the middle and such. So this is why, they're not at full strength as the Bulls are. And look, I think what John scored, I think like 20, 8 points or something like that in the second half. I guess he got inspired by, I guess they did a video montage of Jordan and some of his greatest plays. And apparently he admitted in the post game that that kind of woke him up a little bit because he kind of struggled early on in the first half. Now, of course, Steven Adams, who apparently plays like Wilt Chamberlain when he's playing the Bulls, but Vooch didn't have no answer for him, neither did Tristan Thompson. So, but I think this showed that exposed the Bulls for what it is. Hopefully, the good news that we saw the various tweets from various Bulls beat writers earlier at practice. Caruso, who happy birthday, by the way, he's 28 today. He
Happy
actually
birthday to Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, he actually has his sleeve off his wrist. He's now doing, light drills. So maybe, hopefully, he can come back within the next week or two, perhaps.
Mhm.
There's been no update on Lonzo Ball yet, but hopefully, that also he'll also be cleared, for contact and such. So hopefully, we'll see him within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Patrick Williams, although again, same thing, he hasn't been
Mhm.
clear for any, activities yet, but he has sort of been moving around and Coach Donovan says he's progressing well. And look, I think we need those. I think the Bulls need them back because I think they show that they are deficient, and some of the good teams, like the Grizzlies, can expose that. So, like I said, I'm not worried. I know, of course, Bulls Twitter was in full force. Vooch. Okay, Vooch had his struggles. He scored 11, had 11
Mhm.
points, and still at 12 rebounds, so he still had a double double. He said, "Oh, he's a bomb again. Get rid of him." Zach LaVine kicked in with 28 points. I think people need to remember he didn't. He
Mhm.
struggled. People forget, you need to remember he is still a rookie, folks. So I think people need to kind of get him off his back. He didn't score any points. He kind of definitely had his struggles, couldn't get any shots off. And such. So yeah, look, I'm not worried about the Bulls. I mean, they play Miami tonight. Miami's going to be without a couple of their top guys. Kyle Lowry is out, and they're going to be out a few other guys as well. Victor Oladipo hasn't been cleared to play yet either, so he hasn't. I don't think he's played yet since he got traded there. So it's sort of one of those things where you kind of like, okay, maybe the Bulls can sneak in one tonight.
And getting back to that Grizzlies game last Saturday, we mentioned Tristan Thompson. In 16 minutes of action, he had 5 points and 4 rebounds. But it was his energy that brought the Bulls back in that fourth quarter. It started to wake up DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine as well. Lakeena, as I said to someone on Twitter offline, that the Bulls. Tristan Thompson is going to help this team, and he's the presence that from the interior defensively that this Bulls team needs. But you can't play him 20-25 minutes. He's not young anymore. He's not real old either, but he just doesn't have it as much anymore. And it's up to other people to step in and step up. I like Javonte Green. You know how much I like him, but he's just undermanned trying to bring that intensity every night. He's a 6'5", 6'6" guy. You guarding folks like Giannis, who's 6'11", and you guarding Jaren Jackson Jr., who's a tall beast as well. There's always so much a guy that size and green that he can guard those bigger guys. And Vucevic, he's got to play some sort of defense. Lakeena, I know he's an offensive guy. We talked about it before, but can I get just a little defense, just a little bit from him,
That's
just a
never been
little?
his. That's
I don't
never
think
been
that's too
his
much to
game.
ask.
Well, I mean, that's never really been his game. I mean, I think like Vooch has never been like a defender, so
Mhm.
he's got other players behind him. That's why he brought in Tristan Thompson to kind of be that sort of like defensive guy in the interior, because that's
Mhm.
never been Vooch's game. It never has been. So look, this is one of those losses where you kind of you put it to the side, and you're 39-22. Every other. The good news is that more than enough Eastern Conference teams have struggled since the break is coming back from the break, I should say. So I'm not worried about the Bulls. Like I said, they got good ones done against Miami. They're also undermanned for other reasons. But
Mhm.
this is sort of one of those games where you kind of just put to the side and you just burn the tape, because look, they had their chances to win that game. I mean, they had their struggles in the last few minutes. The Grizzlies did, but the Bulls just weren't able to capitalize. The Rose had an open shot at a three, but thought he
Mhm.
was fouled. They lost. The calls in that game were just atrocious. Let's not
Yeah.
get don't get me started on that. The refereeing in general has been has been questionable this year. And I feel like I'm not, you don't want to blame the refs, but I kind of feel like they didn't help matters. I'll say that. And look, let's put it like this. I mean, the Bulls had their chance to win that game, they just couldn't capitalize.
Wrapping up our recap of last Saturday's nice loss to the Grizzlies. Besides John Moran pouring in 46 points, Steven Adams, as you mentioned, he had 12 points and 21 rebounds in 35 minutes of action. Jared Jackson Jr. had 8 points and 4 rebounds. And Desmond Bain struggled from the field, only 4 and 18 shooting, 1 of 7 from three-point range. Like you said, the Bulls had their chances. They just couldn't shut down John Moran and Steven Adams. At least good news for Steven Adams. Tony Bradley wasn't in the ball game, so he had to pick him up and throw him in the fifth row.
Thank goodness. I think that might have been why Coach Donovan decided not to play
Yeah.
him. So that might have been one of the reasons. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, look, I think we'll just put a capper on this game. I mean,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, yes, you lose the season series. Okay, you probably won't see him again. You won't see him again unless you guys meet in the finals. So just put this
Mhm.
on the back burner and just lock it away and burn the tape. That's all I can do with this game.
You're listening to Second City Sports, the Monday edition, right here on Sports on Chicago. We're live in 11 colors. Sid Lakeena here with you as we talk Bulls. We'll have our NBA discussion coming up, but first we'll preview tonight's game between the Bulls and the Heat. The the time for that game, I believe, is at 6:30. Yeah, 6:30 p.m. Chicago
Hmm.
time. You can watch that game locally on NBC Sports Chicago, nationally on NBA League Pass. I know there's Bally Sports Sun down there. You good folks in Florida, if you folks in Miami happen to watch this program right now. Lakina, what are you looking forward to tonight's game? I know you mentioned that the Heat are going to miss some key players.
Yeah, they are. Kyle Lowry's out, due to personal reasons. Oladipo is still nursing that foot injury, so he's out again. You know, Markieff Morris is also out as well. So he's going to be undermanned as well. So this is sort of a chance for the Bulls. I know they're going to want that get that taste of the Grizzlies game out of their mouth. So I'm thinking that maybe this should be a really good one tonight. I know our girl Alana Tekar, who is the residential Heat fan, if you will. I know she's gonna be looking forward to this game, and of course, like they're gonna be both teams are gonna be kind of like undermanned. So even though she should be a good one regardless, you still got Jimmy Butler and also Bam. I'm sure because Bam did not play in that previous meeting against the Bulls, so I'm sure he's gonna
Mhm,
want to get his going too because he's been doing pretty well since coming back from break. Tyler
mhm,
Hero, that should be a fun one. Him, I'm sure he and Io will probably be facing each other, and also Zach as well. So that should be a fun one when he comes off the bench, Hero. So this should be a really good one. And look, could this be perhaps a preview of a Eastern Conference playoff game, whether it's the semis or the finals? Who knows? But this should be a fun one. Though yes, they're both going to be undermanned, but it should still be a fun one tonight.
Yeah, as we talked about before all season, Lakina, on this show, Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Heat, you have to give him credit. I think he's doing
Mhm.
his best job over the last couple of years. He doesn't have the sexy names that lights up social media or lights up your TV screen as far as commercials are concerned. Yes, you still have former Bull Jimmy Butler, but you mentioned Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and Duncan Robinson. Those guys fit their specific roles and they play their parts to close to perfection. So, and we'll review the rest of the weekend in the association coming up. But you saw some of that on Friday as they defeated the New York Knicks in front of a national audience. And this Heat team is very good defensively, and they're going to get after the Bulls. We've seen that in the previous two games so far this season. And you also watch out for Gabe Vincent. He had a big game here in
Mhm.
Chicago early in the season. So you still have no name players that could come up and score big time points in big time situations. So it's not going to be easy for the Bulls tonight. I know it's not a fair judgment, as you said, because both teams have key players missing from their lineups. But as I said early in the season, should these two teams meet in the playoffs, it's going to go 7 games, perhaps 6.
Yeah, they've
So
won
we're going to
nine
get a
of
taste of it tonight.
Yeah, they've won 9 of the last 10 the Heat has, so I'm sure
Hmm.
the Bulls will love to kind of, put a damper. They're on a 3-game winning streak, so yeah, I'm sure the Bulls would love to kind of put a damper on that tonight. And look, I think the Heat's one of those teams where I know Cleveland that's gotten sort of the rappers being the surprise team in the East, but I think
Hmm.
Miami is because no one thought that Miami would be like the number one seed as of this recording in the East right now with all the injuries and the COVID issues that they've had. I know the Bulls have had a lot of attention because they've had similar issues, but
Hmm.
Miami, as you said, I'm sure Eric Spoelstra is probably one of the leaders in the clubhouse for Coach of the Year because of everything that
Hmm.
they've went through. Jimmy being hurt, and Bam, had injury issues earlier this season. The COVID issues and such. So, but they've been able to play very well. You got Tyler Hero, you got Markieff Morris, you've got other guys, stepping up. And Gabe Vincent, like you said he's been kind of like that, the guy off the bench, sort of like one of the unsung heroes of this Heat team. So this is gonna
Hmm.
be a tough one for the Bulls. And look, the first two meetings were tough. So yeah, now granted,
Yeah.
I think the earlier ones, I think Jimmy didn't play the second one. I know that in a couple of others, the Bulls weren't at full strength. So that's still the case this time. But again, it should be a lot of fun. I mean, I'm sure Jimmy always loves playing the Bulls. One of his former teams, and also too, I'm sure DeMar could still perhaps maybe keep that streak of scoring 30 plus points. I know Zach that last Miami Heat meeting, Zach did not play, so I don't know. Zach's gonna want to
Mhm.
put on a little bit of a show too tonight. So look, there's gonna be a lot of guys that are gonna be. Yes, they're gonna both teams are still gonna be not at full strength, but they've got the stars and such, and it should be a fun one. I feel like I'm surprised this game's not on national television, but it is what it is. But it's because this could be a preview one of Eastern Conference playoff game playoff round series, I should say.
Once again, that game can be seen tonight locally here in Chicago at 6:30 p.m. on NBC Sports Chicago, nationally on NBA League Pass. You're listening to Second City Sports, the Monday edition, live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena are here with you as we continue our basketball power hour. Let's get into the rest of the association, the best and worst from the weekend. Lakeena, let's start off with the Los Angeles Lakers, and
Do
they
we have
lose a
to?
close one on
Do we
Friday
have
to the
to?
Los.
Do we
They
have
lost.
to?
Yeah,
Do
I
we have
know. We won't spend the whole hour on it. I promise you that. So, but the Los Angeles Lakers lose a close one to their in-city
to?
rivals, the Clippers, on Friday. I don't want to get into that play when LeBron James stepped out of bounds. It took a half hour to review that. That's why we have a
uh,
review system for. We should have a time
Gosh.
limit. He stepped out of bounds. What the hell is going on there? But anyway, the Lakers lost a close one on Friday to the Clippers, and then of course last night they got booed off their home
Ugh.
court, and rightfully so. Losing to New Orleans Hornets 123-95. Lakeena, I know New Orleans, we talked about in our last show last week that they're going through their own issues with Zion Williamson, and they're asking fans to pay up their money for next year's season tickets. And Mr. Williamson was not mentioned in their advertising package. But
Mhm.
are you going to sit there and tell me that the Pelicans are that much better than the Lakers, given the Lakers' struggles? No. For the few minutes that I watched the game live last night, it looks like the Lakers' hearts weren't even in it. They walked around, shoulders slumped, and they felt sorry for themselves.
It was one of those things where I believe I saw a clip on social media that was making rounds that Jeannie Buss, was leaving, like halfway through the third quarter. I
Mm-hmm.
know she was getting sick and tired of it. Look, I didn't watch the game, but you kind of tell that they're sort of many of them, not all, because LeBron's LeBron. He's gonna put it out there every single night. Even he gets a
Mm-hmm.
36. It seems like nobody else doesn't seem to be doing that. I mean, Carmelo has kind of pulled back a little bit. He only scored 13. Russell Westbrook, I mean, 0 for 2 from three-pointer. It's just, and Austin Reeves is going back to going back to the mean obscurity. Trevor, Ariza, what happened to him? This is, he wanted to come back here, but
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately he's not contributing. Dwight Howard, I think, is a shell of himself. And just
Mm-hmm.
the a lot of cast offs off the list. Wayne Ellington, Malik Monk hasn't been a factor these last few games, even
Mm-hmm.
before the break. So it's definitely one of those things. You're kind of like, wait, what's going on here? And heads are rolling, I'm sure, in Los Angeles. And you look, we've seen Laker legends are chiming in. Magic Johnson. Magic
Mm-hmm.
has had his saying about it. We all know, we all saw what James Worthy said. Last a couple of weeks back before the break. Basically saying that they're a disgrace to the Lakers organization. So it's sort of one of those things where you're kind of just like, you just gotta, I don't know. I mean, you're getting like 20, that's what, like 21 games that the Lakers have, and they're still right there in like the the play in the West, but you gotta think that they need to get it together, and they better get it together quick, or else it's gonna be a long off season for the Lakers. Now the Pelicans, I mean, they've been playing okay lately, but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, Sid, they're in 10th. I mean, they've passed. They're tied with Portland, but I guess percentage points. That's why they're ahead of Portland right now for that last spot in the play-in. But you're seriously saying that Zion. Look, who knows what's going on with that whole Zion situation. I mean, it's sort of one of those things. You're kind of like, okay, well, what's the real issue here? And I just think you do really think that you're going to stand here and tell me that the Pelicans are better than the Lakers? No, no. Look, CJ McCollum. I know he's doing his best. He led the way. They actually been playing pretty well since he got traded there. Brandon Ingram is a really solid young player. They got other great young players on that staff. Tony Snell's still around, so go figure there. But but right, I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, this whole thing with the Lakers is just, I know we're going up against it, but give us your quick thoughts right quick on the Lakers and the Pelicans.
Yes, I listen to a whole bunch of out of town radio via my cell phone, via this
Hmm.
computer screen,
Hmm.
and I know long time sports columnist Bill Plaschke. He was doing an interview on a
Mm.
local LA sports radio station last week. He wrote a column talking about trade LeBron James. I don't think that's going to happen. We talked about this before, Lakeena, especially early in the season. With Frank Vogel, their head coach, will be fired. That still may be in play. I know that's not the talk right now, but we talked about this too last week, Lakina. Coming off of All
Hmm.
Star Weekend, LeBron James was mentioning other general managers because current Lakers GM Rob Pelinka did make a move, i.e., trade Russell Westbrook. And LeBron James, we all know he's a me first guy. He's a passive aggressive person, and he basically threw Rob Pelinka under the bus. Should this
Hmm.
team not make the playoffs, who pays the price? Pelinka, Frank Vogel, or both?
I think both. I think it's the coaching and look, they will win a title, in the bubble. But the
Hmm.
problem is at this point that it's not working. Whatever Coach Vogel is teaching and saying it's not clicking with certain
Hmm.
players. And excuse me, as far as Palinka is concerned, I mean, yeah, LeBron, helped kind of put these guys together, but Palinka is at the point in his career where he could have just told LeBron, no, like this guy's not going to fit and blah blah blah. So the fact that I think both share some sort of the blame because think that look, these guys just don't mesh well together, and we said that when we did our preview that this was going to be sort of the big issue. Would
Hmm.
these guys mesh? And unfortunately, we're seeing that that's not the case.
We'll review ABC's Saturday night primetime game between the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks. Plus, their doubleheader action yesterday was solid as well, at least the second game, the Jazz and Suns game.
Mhm.
And we have news on Kyrie Irving's future playing in NYC. And also, we'll get into some college basketball as well. As you continue to listen, this is Second City Sports. We're live in the 11 color. Second City Sports. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. We'll see you on the flip side.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
DeRozan, foul line left. Count it! Foul! DeMar DeRozan with the hoop, the harm, and one.
Bulls radio with the call. 112-108 the win over the Hawks last night. Chicago at 39-21 with the win. DeMar DeRozan, 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Nikola Vukovic with a double-double. Nice night for Zach LaVine with 20 points. The Bulls host the Grizzlies tomorrow night. Chicago on top of the Eastern Conference by a half game over the Heat. Wins in 7 of 10 and 6 in a row. The Blackhawks are winless in 3. They're back at it tonight hosting the Devils. Chicago's last game was Sunday, a 5-2 home loss against Florida. College hoops last night, number 22 Ohio State with an 86-83 win at number 15 Illinois. The Illini are 12-5, second in the Big Ten, chasing Wisconsin and Purdue. They're both 13-4. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can save just by being you. DriveWise and the Allstate mobile app gives you personalized driving feedback, and by adding it to your policy, you can save for driving safe just by being yourself. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings based on DriveWise and other safe driving discounts. Savings vary. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Got a party of 10 coming in, and we need to flip those 2 tables.
Leah's restaurant is fully booked night after night.
Section 3 is still behind.
She no longer has reservations about finally finding a hostess.
Why doesn't 23 have menus? Oh, because they're in my hand.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you as we continue to talk about the NBA, a large in our basketball power hour. Lakeena, let's review the best games from this past weekend. We'll start out with the Saturday night primetime game on ABC. It was the Brooklyn Nets undermanned, defeating the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champs, 126-123. Kyrie Irving led the way with 38 points, including 14 and 26 shooting. Seth Curry had 19 points, including 4 or 8 from downtown. On the flip side for the Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo had 29 points and 14 rebounds. Bobby Portis, former Chicago Bull, had 30 points on the 8 of 14 shooting from downtown. Chris Middleton, the second banana on the Bucks, added 25. Brooklyn hung in tough and came out there with the win.
Yeah, Brooklyn has looked really good, even though, yes, they're still undermanned. And the fact that they were able to pull that out and make some big shots late, against the Warriors of all teams. Of course, there were some struggles from the field, but Brooklyn, the Bucks, I should say, sorry. Kyrie, 38 points. I mean, the fact that they were able to kind of pull it off late. I mean, I think no one thought that maybe they could win this game, but the Nets, I think, again, Ben Simmons, we'll get to him in a second because there's some stuff that came out about that. I got my old conspiracy theories about that. But, yeah,
you're not the only one.
Yeah, right. And Seth Curry had 19 points, so he's been kind of sort of been helping out since that trade with the Sixers, and look, they've looked really good. And look, Andre Drummond, made some made a big stop, to kind of keep the Nets hang on. And look, it's sort of one of those things where I think they're doing what they can, and I think they're starting to kind of figure it out. Once Simmons does play, whenever that is, maybe they can kind of maybe put together a run.
Yeah, like I said, Brooklyn will be a better team once Kevin Durant gets back. It looks like it's going to be later on this week. We'll see.
Yep,
we'll see what's going on with that. And Ben Simmons, I'm sure as you know what he's going to play after March 10th. The reason why we threw out that date because they're going to play Philadelphia in Philadelphia, and Ben Simmons does not want none of that heat.
Allegedly.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens with that. But as I said before, Lakeena, on our last couple of shows, once Durant gets back and he sells in his role as the leader of the team, things should fall in place for Brooklyn. Now, as far as Kyrie Irving is concerned, I know New York City Mayor Eric Adams, I believe that's his name, and he said that they're rolling back on the mandates, just like most of the states here in the United States due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But he said it's still a staple on Kyrie Irving playing in New York City. So we'll see how that situation comes about. And so if Kyrie Irving can play full time, this next team will be even better.
Well, and the thing is, I think they've some businesses have already said that they're going to keep the mandates, and I think that's the case with the Barclays Center. So I think that's probably why they have not decided whether or not that they're going to do away with the mandates like everything else. So some businesses might be lifted, they might not, the vax and the mask mandate. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I wonder about that with the United Center in Chicago because they followed the guidelines from the city of Chicago. Of course, the city of Chicago has lifted it as of today, like in most places. Will the United Center keep that mandate on, or will they lift it just like the city did? That's going to be another question as well that has to be answered here because the Bulls have a game there on Friday against the Milwaukee Bucks. I believe the Blackhawks have a home game Thursday against Edmonton, I believe.
Yes,
so
yeah.
We'll see if that mandate is still on or did they lift it along with the city?
Well, I think like I said, I think some businesses are going to keep the mandates. Maybe not necessarily the vax mandates, but probably the mask mandates. So it really depends. I would say to maybe just call ahead to your business, or if you're more comfortable wearing a mask, look, I'm still going to wear my mask in certain spots, just because I don't trust some of y'all. Just saying, but But I mean, look, just do what you do what you want. But yeah, I think we'll have our answer within the next week or two.
Okay. And back to on the court action. Let's go back to Friday's action. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they hosted the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, it was the debut of one Mr. James Harden in the Sixers uniform. He nearly missed a triple-double, but he had 27 points off of 12 assists and 8 rebounds as part of a 133-102 victory. Lakeena, I'm not surprised by this. James Harden, when things don't go his way, he pouts and he goes through the motions and wants to get whatever he wants. It's worked in 2 places. They went away from Houston and Brooklyn. So far, not a surprise. He's off to a great start with Mr. Joel Embiid in Philadelphia.
I know some people say it's Minnesota, but Minnesota's actually been pretty solid this year. So I think we'll give a little bit of love to Minnesota in that sense. I mean, both him and Embiid and Tyrese Maxwell all scored 25 plus points. It's only the second time this season that the Sixers had a trio that did that. So Could there be perhaps, maybe a big three brewing? That might be a little quick to say that right now, but they looked really good. I mean, look, Minnesota, like I said, Minnesota is actually a pretty decent team, so I know that's not the best test, but they look, we'll see how they mesh. I think apparently, I guess, Harden, it seems like he was wearing a fat suit. He said, you know what, I'm all, he's skinny and he's, playing like, like the Harden that we know and love. So, I guess we'll get to the next game in a second, but yeah, it is what it is, but it's just crazy.
One team that had a bounce back game yesterday. That was the Dallas Mavericks defeating the Golden State Warriors. That was the first game of the ESPN doubleheader from last night. The Mavericks come from behind to defeat the Warriors 107-101 after trailing by 20 points. Lakeena, just like everybody else, I turned away from this game. I said Golden State had this one, and of course I turned back. Dallas was up by 5 points with the seconds remaining. Luka Doncic had a monster game again, but it was a big win for Dallas after losing a close one at Utah on Friday.
Yeah, I know they're kicking themselves, and I know that Luka said he wasn't very happy with that. So, but the fact that he scored 34 and Dinwiddie had the
Yeah, as you mentioned, Lakeena, it's the role players of the Dallas Mavericks that came through in the game against the Golden State Warriors last night, defeating the Warriors by 6. As you mentioned, Luka Doncic had a big game with 34 points. Jalen Brunson had 8 points off of 4 and 9 shooting. Reggie Bullock had 12 points off of 4-8 shooting from downtown, and also Finney had 14 points and 9 rebounds. And off the bench, Spencer Dinwiddie, as you mentioned, had 24 points off of 10 of 14 shooting, including 2 of 4, from three-point range. The Dallas Mavericks are now 36-25 on the year. The Golden State Warriors are still holding on to that top spot in the Western Conference with a 43-18 record as they battle the Phoenix Suns for that top spot in the Western Conference. And speaking of the Phoenix Suns, yesterday they lose a heartbreaker to the Utah Jazz, 118-114 in that second game of that ABC doubleheader yesterday. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert leading the way for the Utah Jazz as the Jazz improved their record to 38-22 on the season. Donovan Mitchell had 26 points, including 6 of 11 from downtown. He had a big time 3-point shot under a minute to go to separate the Jazz from the Phoenix Suns. Rudy Gobert, the Stifle Tower, the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, he had 16 points in 14 rebounds and 29 minutes of action. Ryan O'Neal, the starting power forward for the Jazz, had 9 points and 2 assists. And coming off the bench, Jordan Clarkson had 22 points off of 10-17 shooting, including 2 of 7 from three-point range in 26 minutes of action. On the flip side for the Phoenix Suns, Jamison Crowder, who had a bad turnover in the last 5 seconds of the game, he had 16 points, including 4 of 8 shooting from downtown. He had a 3-pointer late to draw the Suns closer, but Phoenix just couldn't get over the hump. Remember, the Phoenix Suns are playing without Chris Paul. Devin Booker, in 40 minutes of action, had 30 points off of 12 of 24 shooting, including 4 of 8 from downtown. Miles Bridges had 11 points off the 38 minutes of tick. And coming off the bench, the Phoenix Suns only had 11 points total off the bench. The most productive guy off their bench was JaVale McGee, their backup big man. He had 4 points and 7 rebounds in 14 minutes of action. So the Phoenix Suns failed to close out the Utah Jazz yesterday. As I mentioned, the Warriors and the Warriors in the Phoenix Suns are battling for the top 2 spots in the Western Conference. Other games of note from last night: the Clippers defeated the bad Houston Rockets 99-98. The Denver Nuggets put it on the Trailblazers without Damian Lillard, 124-92. And this was a exciting game to watch, and I caught some of this last night. The Detroit Pistons defeated the Charlotte Hornets 127-126. PJ Washington had a big game for the Charlotte Hornets. Also, LaMelo Ball had a nice game, but he struggled with a couple of bad turnovers down the stretch. The Pistons were led by Cade Cunningham, the rookie out of Oklahoma State. He had 19 points, including on 7 of 16 shooting. Kelly Olynyk, who hit the game winner in overtime last night, had 20 points off a 3-point shooting percentage of 80%, 4 or 5 shooting. The Charlotte Hornets, who struggled closing out closing out, losing 6 out of the last 8 games, I believe, going into the All-Star break. Their struggles continue as they now are 30-32 on the year. They're one of the few surprise teams in the NBA going starting off the year, but they've fallen on hard times the last few weeks. Of course, Detroit, they're 15-46 on this season. You're listening to Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're trying to establish a connection with Lakeena McGee. Hopefully she'll rejoin me in just a moment as I'll continue to go through some of the key games for you guys in the National Basketball Association. The first game of that ABC doubleheader yesterday, as we mentioned, the Philadelphia 76ers. They defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves on Friday. They come back yesterday and put on a show at Madison Square Garden, defeating the New York Knicks by the score of 125-109. Joel Embiid had a monster game for Philadelphia, 37 points and 9 rebounds. And James Harden added 29 points, including his first triple-double in the Philadelphia 76ers uniform, 16 assists and 10 rebounds.
Just wanted to finish my math point before I was so rudely interrupted by my my laptop battery here. Look, I think the Mavs are playing very well lately. They looked really good against the Warriors yesterday. And I feel like maybe they're starting to kind of maybe get things together here, because if you remember early in the season, people were wondering if Jason Kidd was was the right guy for the job, but looks like they kind of put it together a little bit. Like I said, Spencer Dinwiddie had 24 off the bench, so you'll be the utility guy as he usually is. So yeah, I think Dallas could be one of those teams where could they make a play for that Western Conference? We'll have to wait and see. The Western Conference is loaded now. You're talking about that Sixers Knicks game yesterday, and I kind of feel like the Knicks are they're just things are just going off the rails.
That's terrible.
Yes, I think
That's an 8, that's a 9, that's a 10.
As a stinkiness, I think that's probably another thing. But yeah, look, Embiid, is showing you why he's the front runner for MVP. He had 37, and Maxey, I think they're starting to kind of mesh pretty well together with him and Embiid and Harden. Harden had 29, so you gotta think that. I'm not going to say this is the new big three. I'm sure people are already touting them as such, but we'll see. I mean, so far, so good. I mean, we'll see how they do in these next few games coming up, because they got a tough schedule, so we'll get to that in a second, but they look really good so far.
Yeah, Philadelphia, as we talked about before, with the addition of James Harden, they'll be one of the top teams contending for that Eastern Conference title, perhaps an NBA title. But as I mentioned before, the chemistry with James Harden and Joel Embiid, that's going to have to work, because if it doesn't, there's going to be some questions that needs to be answered. It may cost Doc Rivers his job, but we still have a long way to go with that. And speaking of the schedule, Lakeena, as we wrap up our NBA portion of the show, let's take a look at the schedule for this upcoming week, starting with tonight's game, which is Monday. A good one here at 6 o'clock Chicago time. Minnesota will visit Cleveland to take on the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers have struggled a bit, losing their first couple of games coming off the All-Star break. It's also at 6, the Pacers and the Magic. No one cares about that. At 6:30, the Brooklyn Nets, without Kyrie for now, will host the surging Toronto Raptors. This should be a good one. Toronto's one of those surprise teams over the last month or so in the Eastern Conference. Watch out for rookie Scotty Barnes from Texas. He's been improving his game over the course of the season. So these two teams played each other last month. Brooklyn got barely out of there with the win. So this should be a good one tonight up there in the Barclays Center. Toronto is favored by 4 points. Of course, the Bulls and the Heat at the same time at 6:30. At 7 o'clock, the Spurs will take on the Memphis Grizzlies down south of there. At 7 o'clock on NBA TV, the struggling Charlotte Hornets will travel to Milwaukee to take on the defending champion Bucks. And wrapping up tonight's schedule, the Sacramento Queens, as Shaquille O'Neal once said, they'll travel to OKC to take on the Thunder.
I think Milwaukee will definitely have a bad taste in their mouth when they lost to Brooklyn, so I'm sure they're definitely going to, especially Charlotte too, they've been struggling, these last couple of games. So we'll see how they look tonight, and we'll see how Milwaukee responds. On Tuesday, the first day of March, Detroit and Washington, that should be a fun one. I think Washington, they've still, they've been struggling. Of course, Beal is out. They're still right there in the conversation for that play-in. So we'll see what happens with that. Both teams are actually Atlanta and Boston. That's the first game of that Tuesday TNT doubleheader at 6:30. Brooklyn and Toronto, they're doing the reverse thing. I think it's more of a COVID, thing. I think this is a makeup game from, earlier this year. So that might be why, the Brooklyn, Toronto game, you're seeing it like, wait, but didn't they are supposed to play tonight? Well, it's sort of reversed. This is actually a makeup game. So that's what that is. Clippers in Houston, Golden State in Minnesota. That should be a fun one at 7 o'clock. And also too, Dallas against the lonely Lakers at 9 o'clock. Second half of that TNT doubleheader. I'm sure TNT wishes that it could have flexed out of that, but
How much will Luka Doncic score?
I think the over is probably 40, so we'll see.
There you go. Continuing with our schedule now, let's go to Wednesday's action at 6 o'clock. Charlotte will battle the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland. At 6 o'clock, the Pacers and Magic will do battle again. No one cares. At 6:30, part of the first game of the Wednesday doubleheader on ESPN, the New York Knicks will take on the Philadelphia 76ers, this time in the city of brotherly love. It could get ugly again for the Knicks. We'll see about that. Let's see how much voice that Screaming A. Smith has left. At 7 o'clock, we'll have Utah at Houston. Also at 7 o'clock, Miami at Milwaukee. I wish ESPN probably wish they had this game, but because of James Harden and Joel Embiid, they decided to keep that New York-Philadelphia game. Also at 7 o'clock, we have Sacramento and New Orleans. No one cares. At 8 o'clock, OKC Thunder will travel to Denver to take on the Nuggets. And to wrap up that ESPN doubleheader, we'll have Portland without Damian Lillard. They'll travel to Phoenix to take on the Suns. Of course, the Suns, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there are without Chris Paul.
I think Jay Crowder's probably have they found that ball what Jay Crowder was trying to pass to yesterday in that game, a game against Utah. Like, really? Like, who were you trying to throw that thing to? I mean, Denver, against Utah. Like, who are you trying to throw that thing to? Come on now. Come on, Jay. You're a veteran. You're better than that. But, look, Phoenix has struggled a little bit, without CP3, but, Portland doesn't have Dame. So this could be a get-right game for them. I'm sure ESPN wishes that they had flexed this game out, but it should still be a fun one. Thursday, you got Chicago and Atlanta. I'm sure Trae Young's going to want his revenge against because the game against the Bulls last week. We'll see. That's a 6 o'clock game. Note to
You remember that's the first of the back-to-back for the Chicago Bulls before hosting Milwaukee on Friday.
So we'll see what happens there. Memphis and Boston, the first game of that TNT Thursday night doubleheader. So that should be a fun one. Miami, this should be a good one too. Miami and Brooklyn. I'm sure TNT's probably was hoping that maybe they could have gotten this game, but it is what it is. Detroit and Toronto, Golden State and Dallas. That should be a good one at 7:30. Sacramento and San Antonio, and the second half of the TNT doubleheader. This time it's the reverse. You got the Lakers and the Clippers at the Staples Center. I'm not calling it by that corporate name. That's not happening. But we'll see if the Lakers can bounce back from that, weird game from last week against the Clippers. So
I know.
we'll see.
I know. Team had a classic game between these two teams about a month ago. I don't know if you're going to get that this time, but I know TNT wish they flexed out of this one and perhaps carried their Warriors Mavericks game, but it wasn't meant to be. So we'll see what happens with that Lakers Clippers game on Thursday. That's your schedule for the association for this upcoming week. You're listening to Second City Sports on the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, our last show for February, Black History Month. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. Lakeena, let's go to college basketball before we review what went down on Saturday as 7 of the top 10 teams lost. Let's start out locally, and let's start with some good news. The Illinois Fighting Illini, with their 20th win of the season, as I told you on our last show on Friday, they defeated the Michigan Wolverines without Juwan Howard, their head coach, who suspended, 93-85. My guy, Alfonso Plummer, had a big game. Finally, he came out to play. He was shooting it from long distance, 6 of 9 to be exact, leading the Illini with 26 points. Trent Frazier, who had a dagger three-pointer late with under a minute to go, he has 17 points, including 3 of 3 shooting from long range. Kobe Coburn, you got to get your free throws together, brother. But he had 27 points and 7 rebounds. And Hawkins, their big guy coming off the bench, he had 6 points. Lakeena, I like the way this Coleman Hawkins, I should say. He had
Hawkins,
6. He had 6 points and 4 rebounds. He did a nice job patrolling the paint. On the flip side, for Michigan, Dickinson, who didn't play in their first game a month ago, he had 13 points and 11 rebounds, but he struggled shooting from the field, only 4-13 overall. Lakeena, I like the way this Illini team is playing. As we said before, we kind of chronicled out for you guys the way the season's going to end. I know you'll read the rest of that schedule coming up. They only have 2 more games remaining before the Big Ten tournament next week. But this team should get 22 wins before that Big Ten tournament next week. They still going to they're still fighting for that top spot as far as the regular season title, and the Big Ten is another big game coming up in the Big Ten schedule for this week. We'll get to in just a moment, but I like the way this Illini team is playing right now. With all good teams, is how quickly do you bounce back from a bad loss? We talked about it on our last show on Friday, Lakeena. They got caught with their pants hanging down against Ohio State. They bounced back big time, winning at Michigan. So they're 2-0 in the state of Michigan this year. They defeated Michigan State in East Lansing, and they defeated the Wolverines in Ann Arbor yesterday.
Yeah, it was a nice win for Illinois. They actually kind of almost blew that lead. They were up, I think, like by 14. But Michigan was able to come back. They just couldn't get it together late to kind of really make it a game those last few minutes. They made some big stops, like Coburn had a couple big shots and such. So, and Trent Frazier had that big 3. Look, I think Illinois, especially since Purdue lost, we'll get to them in a second. We'll probably have to take a break first, then before a week, because I don't want to rush through this talk, because this is the last week of the regular season, folks, and folks are starting to kind of jockey for position and with bubble teams and stuff. So we're gonna extend it to after the break. But staying with Illinois here, I think they got a shot at perhaps maybe being, I think they're a 3 seed right now, or a low 3. They could go up to maybe a higher 3, perhaps. So we'll see if they can do that. I mean, look, Illinois, they've got a shot to perhaps making it to, perhaps, I don't know, they're going to go, I don't know, this is a Final Four team, but they definitely can make a run in the tournament. I think if Coburg, does what he does, and, Frazier does what he does, because there's sometimes that Frazier struggles from the field. So it's sort of one of those things where, can you trust him? I know this wouldn't be his first rodeo in the tournament, so no, he really trusts him in the tournament. Plummer is one of those guys that's also kind of feast or famine, so you don't know what you're going to get from him sometimes. Carvello, had 12 off the bench, big points off the bench, so that's that sort of helps in that sense. But on the outside, but it's sort of one of those things where you look, Illinois is still they still got a shot to perhaps get that 1 seed. They still got to deal with Purdue, Wisconsin. So I think Illinois is definitely capable. You got the Big Ten tournament next week, so there's going to be everybody's got like 2 or 3 games left. So we'll get to the schedule in a second. But Illinois looked really good. I got to say though, I'm glad they were able to pull that out.
And you had to give head coach Brad Underwood credit too, because he came into this situation a few years ago, had to rebuild the program, get his type of players in there. You've seen over the last couple of years, even though they had a disappointing loss against Loyola last year in the big dance, you can see this team is growing. And I wanted to ask you, Lakeena, I'll ask our listeners and viewers, go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Who is your key player outside of Kofi Coburn for the Illini as they prepare to play in the Big Ten tournament in the Big Dance, which starts March 17th? I don't count that foreign BS, but who's your key player, your underrated player that you're looking forward to watching for the Illini this year? I have my guy already. You already know, but I want to ask you first. Who's the guy that you're looking at to have a big part of after Kobe Coburn?
Well, I think Frazier. I think this is his first rodeo. This may be his 3rd or 4th tournament. So it's not like I said before. It's kind of like I said, feast or family. Plummer is another one that's can definitely contribute.
That's my guy
going to the tournament. But like I said, it's which one are you going to get? It's sort of feast or famine with him. So it just at this point, I think Illinois got a lot of utility guys. Guys are going to have to step up, especially going to the tournament where you're going to get the best out of a lot of these teams. And you might face a bubble team. You might face a Michigan or somebody like that needs wins to get into the dance. So you can't really afford to take any days off. You just got to take care of your business. So, I mean, Illinois is sort of one of those teams where, yes, they are very capable of going far. But, other than Coburn, we saw what happened. It worked well when he wasn't there, but there were other times where it didn't work. So it all depends on matchups and teams. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, the end of the regular season, going into the Big Ten tournament.
And also keep your eyes on Aaron Cabela, as you mentioned. Lakeena. He had 12 points yesterday, and he's battled through the concussion issues all season long. Hopefully, he stays healthy. I think he's going to be another shot in the arm, positive-wise, for the Illini as well. Also, Coleman Hawkins, as I mentioned, he had 6 points, four rebounds yesterday. He's starting to get a lot of take these last few games, and he's showing that he can come off the bench and provide that energy, especially from the defensive side. You don't need him to score 20 points. Just patrol the paint and get the Illini off and running when you had that key rebound on that key block shot. He's their Tristan Thompson for this team.
Yeah, so he's definitely that guy, and we'll see if we'll see more of him as we get closer and closer to the regular season and into the tournament. Now, one local team, we'll say locally for a second, as I know we're up against it, but we'll talk college hoops as a whole in a second after the break. But Loyola, I guess they have to win the tournament now. They lost to Northern Iowa in a heartbreaker. Yeah, there were some calls, and the end of that game took like 10 minutes. But unfortunately, they lost to Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa wins the regular season championship in the Missouri Valley. They're now the number 1 seed in that conference. I believe Loyola is going to be a 2 or a 3, I think, depending on because their season over. They're going to be starting their tournament. I believe on Wednesday.
Yeah, later on this week. Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday, I believe.
And yeah, so I know some of the Lenardians, some of the brackets have Loyola just finishing out, meaning that very last team in. But if you're Loyola, if you're Drew Valentine, you're gonna.
It starts Thursday, Lakeena.
Oh, Thursday. Okay, so
yeah, Indiana State versus Illinois State, as the schedule has it on my app here.
Okay, so it starts later this week. Well, the point is that it's over with the regular season over for them and for the Missouri Valley, and unfortunately, they're now at that point. Loyola is that they have to win the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. Look, where things happen in that tournament, there could be a team that comes out of nowhere that might take a spot. So if you're Drew Valentine and Loyola, you're gonna have to get things in order here and try to get that automatic bid.
Yeah, as we talked about before, Lakeena, as you mentioned, Joe Lenore, I saw the same stat yesterday. He had them as the first 4 teams out. And we talked about it before, Lakeena. It's a very tough conference with Northern Iowa. You solved your issue with Missouri State. You split the season series with them. But now you had to go with the assumption that the committee, and we know things could change in a heartbeat, but if you're Loyola and Drew Valentine, you had to if you take care of your business, you don't have anything else to worry about. But as of right now, you had to go with the assumption that the committee will not take more than 2 teams from the Missouri Valley. They usually just take the tournament winner, and that's it. But right now, can you remember offhand when was the last time that the Missouri Valley Conference had more than 2 teams going to the Big Dance? I can't remember it.
It's been a while.
There's a couple years that taken 2, but that's been very rare.
That's been rare, but also they have not done it in a while. So if you're Loyola, you better get together and see if you can try to win 3 games and perhaps maybe try to get that automatic bid, not to worry about having to sweat it out with all these other bigger schools, bigger conferences. Mountain West will probably have 3 or 4 this year, and Western the Western Conference, San Francisco might be on the bubble, along with joining them for the West Coast, along with Gonzaga and St. Mary. So we just don't know. So it'll be interesting, nonetheless. But we'll get more college hoops talking. I know we got to go to break, but we're going to talk more college hoops. As we're getting closer and closer to the end of the regular season. Some conferences will be starting their tournaments, as early as tomorrow. But it's still a lot to do. Still, we got sports and media news. We need to get you caught up on some NFL stuff as well, and also too, I'm sure Sid's got our last Black History fact.
You're gonna love it today. I promise you.
All right, with Sid, I'm Lakeena. This is Second State Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you after this break.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Throws it, foul line left. Count it! Foul! DeMar DeRozan with the hoop, the harm, and 1.
Bulls Radio with the call. 112-108 the win over the Hawks last night. Chicago 39-21 with the win. DeMar DeRozan 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Nikola Vukovic with a double-double. Nice night for Zach LaVine with 20 points. The Bulls host the Grizzlies tomorrow night. Chicago on top of the Eastern Conference by a half game over the Heat. Wins in 7 of 10 and 6 in a row. The Blackhawks are winless in 3. They're back at it tonight hosting the Devils. Chicago's last game was Sunday, a 5-2 home loss against Florida. College hoops last night, number 22 Ohio State with an 86-83 win at number 15 Illinois. The Illini are 12-5, second in the Big Ten, chasing Wisconsin and Purdue. They're both 13-4. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can save just by being you. DriveWise and the Allstate mobile app gives you personalized driving feedback. And by adding it to your policy, you can save for driving safe just by being yourself. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings based on DriveWise and other safe driving discounts. Savings vary. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Got a party of 10 coming in, and we need to flip those 2 tables.
Leah's restaurant is fully booked night after night.
Section 3 is still behind.
She no longer has reservations about finally finding a hostess.
Why doesn't 23 have menus? Oh, because they're in my hand.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports Live and Live in Color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. This is Second City Sports. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG.
We got less than 60 minutes left in this extravaganza of a show. You have a question or comment for us during any of our topics for our last hour of the show for today, last show for the month of February. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, let's continue our college basketball talk. As you mentioned, some of the smaller conference tournaments will start later on this week, and the big time conferences will start next week, but their regular season will be winding down by the time starting this week. The regular season for these big Power 5 conferences will start to wind down later on this week. But let's review Saturday's games because 7 of the top 10 ranked teams in the country all went down with losses. Let's start out with the early game, Lakeena. My guy Tyson Walker nailed down the big 3-point shot as Michigan State upset number 4 Purdue in East Lansing 68-65.
No, I'm sure. I think Michigan State, I should say, is still in the tournament regardless. But I think this definitely helps their seeding. They were probably kind of pounding at a 10 seed. They could probably get to an 8 or a 9. Look, just when you thought that maybe Purdue was going to get it together, I mean, they struggled against a really, good, Michigan State, team. They've been, Spartans, I should say. They've been kind of, had their struggles the last couple of weeks. But I watched a little bit of that game. Purdue had plenty of chances to win that game. And they just couldn't capitalize. They kind of step on the necks early. Michigan State did, and they were able to pull away late. And it's sort of one of those things where you're kind of like, okay, Purdue's very capable, perhaps maybe get into the Final Four, but also too, they could definitely lose and probably won the early round. So you just don't know. Now, also too, a shout out to Tom Izzo, who is now, he's now tied for the most wins. In the Big Ten, tied with Bobby Knight. So that's he was very emotional after the game. So that was, I'm sure that had to been very special for him. He's been doing this a long time. So, he could have a chance to perhaps maybe pass it, this week. He could do it tomorrow. So we'll get to this week's games in a second. But, a very nice, nice win for Sparty. And, Purdue is just like, what the heck's going on there with them?
Another top 10 team that went down on Saturday. Number 18, Arkansas upset number 6, Kentucky 75-73. John Calipari walking off the court with still time left on the clock. Not good.
He sent his guys. I think there was some calls that he was questioning, and such. He told his guys kind of just leave the court, and that's exactly what they did. He left the court. We didn't have a. I guess that's probably why he said he did it, so that he wouldn't have to grab or because remember keep in mind that Eric Musselman is actually who's a head coach of Arkansas. He's recovering from rotator cuff surgery, so he's the one who had to grab his arm. So but a nice win for Arkansas. JD Note, he finished up with 30 points and 8 assists. So, he's the first SEC player to record both those marks in a game against AP top 10 team in the last 25 seasons. So a nice win for Arkansas, and yeah, they're helping themselves out because they kind of struggled a little bit too. They were a tournament team. They were ranked earlier. They had their struggles in early in SEC play, but they've been looking good the last couple of weeks, and they're getting hot at the right time. So a nice showing there by Coach Musselman and his Razorbacks.
Number 17, Tennessee. The Volunteers upset number 3, Auburn, and Bruce Pearl's cheating ass 67-62.
Oh, brother.
I just wanted to say that.
Oh, Lord.
For those of you that wonder why I say what I said, do your research.
Google's your friend, folks. But yeah,
Yes.
Tennessee's looked really good too. I mean, they've got a really good squad. Rick Barnes always has his guys ready. I think he's probably one of the most underappreciated guys in college hoops on the men's side. And look, that was a really great showing. Santiago Vescovi had 14. I think he had a double-double. So, he's been kind of like the unsung hero for the Vols this year. And look, they're 12-4 in the conference. They can make a play for that number 1 seed in the SEC. So there's kind of still sort of right there. So a really nice showing. Arkansas, Auburn, I should say. I mean, they kind of their defense kind of lets them down a little bit. So and that showed. I watched a little bit of this game as well. And they looked really good. Tennessee. I mean, there's a total team basketball. Could they be a sleeper, perhaps? In the not a Final Four team. I'm not saying they are, but they could look. They've looked really good. These last couple of weeks as well. So could be a team that maybe people should watch out for.
In Big 12 action, TCU upsets number 9 Texas Tech 69-66.
Another one of those strange endings. It took like a minute. There was a time and then it stopped. I guess one of the Red Raider guys hit a 3-pointer, but it was right after the buzzer, so that Lord knows they stormed the court there. But yeah, TCU really needed this win to perhaps maybe get themselves on the bubble. They're 7-8 right now. They're probably going to have to maybe win a couple of games and perhaps maybe win a couple in the Big 12 tournament. That starts next week. So they're definitely going to have to get it together there. And perhaps if they want a chance to get back into the tournament, I still think they need to win a couple more games. I know some people said they're already in with this, but I would say a couple more wins and they're in. But yeah, a nice win for J.B. Dixon, his Horned Frogs.
In Pac-12 action, the Colorado Buffaloes upset number 2 Arizona Wildcats 79-63.
Definitely their worst game of the season. Arizona, they just couldn't hit their shots, and the defense for Colorado. Look, Colorado's another one of those bubble teams. They're 11-8 in the Pac-12. They're 19-10, so they could they've got some good wins too. So that should help. This should definitely help them a little bit. They got a couple of their guys. KJ Simpson and Barthel. And Kevin Bartholomew, I should say. Oh God, I can't say the poor guy's name. Keyshawn Bartholomew. They'll score 28 points combined off the bench for the Buffaloes, and the Buffaloes have are a really solid team. And I think people since Arizona, both the LA schools are good. I think they could probably be that 5th or 6th team from the Pac-12 to get in. So this would definitely help them in their tournament resume. Arizona, I mean, they've been playing well lately, and this is sort of like I said, their shots just weren't falling for them.
Yeah, I'm more worried about Auburn than Arizona. It was a bad loss for Arizona, but between Arizona and Auburn, who you worry about more? I'm worried about Auburn. They haven't played well in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they've actually had their struggles. So yeah, like I said, Arizona's been playing well this last month. So yes, it was a bad loss to Colorado in Boulder, but it's fine. And like I said before, Colorado needed that win more than they did. That's the 16-point loss against Arizona. That's the largest loss by an AP top 2 team. Against an unranked team since when Virginia lost to UMBC in the tournament and made history for all the wrong reasons in 2018. So
yep. Let's go to the Big 12, the ESPN, the Saturday night primetime game. I know ESPN's doing backflips on this one. The defending national champion Baylor Bears, ranked number 10 in the country. They upset number 5 Kansas Jayhawks 80-70.
Yeah, Baylor's had, speaking of teams struggling the last couple of weeks, I mean, Baylor's kind of had their struggles. I know they lost, some guys, a couple of guys. One of their guys, I think, came back for this game, but, they looked really good. Probably the best they've played in the last month. So, I think Kansas just couldn't hit their shots, and, that place in Waco was rocking. So, of course, they're going to have their guys ready. Flo Thamba, led the way with 18, and it was sort of, they had their bench play and such. So, Jeremy Scotian had 17 off the bench for them. So this was a really nice win for Baylor. Like I said, Baylor needed this win more than KU did. Kansas will probably still win the Big 12 time for like the 16th time under Bill Self. So regular season, I should say. So yeah, so that they don't have to worry about that too much. But but they actually trail Baylor because Baylor still trails them by a loss. So that loss, I think might have they're still in the league, Kansas, but this was a big win for Baylor.
In the last top 10 team to go down, number 1 Gonzaga, they lose to number 23 St. Mary's, 67-57. I think it's another bad loss for Mark Few and Gonzaga, but I'm not worried about them either. It was just a bad game for them. St. Mary's is actually a tough team. I know they had a couple of victories in a tournament a few years ago in their recent history with that school, but St. Mary's definitely deserved this one.
Yeah, I mean, especially after Gonzaga just bum rushed them in their home court. So I guess they got that 10 points. They were up by like 18 or 19. So there was more garbage points. No 10 points. I know some people say, "Oh, they lost by 10." No, it was actually worse than that. St. Mary's kind of dominated from the word go, which is a bad loss. First time ever that 7 ranked teams have lost. So in the same day. So that's a crazy stat there. Now on the flip side, though, Duke with a nice win over Syracuse by 25 points. And look, they're starting to get ready to kind of wrap up the ACC title. Paulo Panchero, Mark Williams, and AJ Griffin, they scored 20 points each in that game. That's just the first time that's happened since Zion Williams and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish did it in 2018. So if those three are meshing well, I think Duke might have a shot to perhaps maybe going pretty far in the tournament this year. Providence looks like they're getting ready to perhaps maybe submit their stamp in the Big East regular season title. They beat Creighton, avenging they lost there earlier this year by 21 points. UCLA, just hammered Oregon State by almost 40. I turned that game off like at halftime. Wisconsin got their revenge. They beat Rutgers in their home floor. I still think Rutgers is in because they got that win in Wisconsin against Wisconsin at the Kohl Center. So that should help them with their resume. Oregon took a step back though by just losing a heartbreaker to USC by 1. I watched a little bit of that game. It just Oregon had plenty of chances to pull to catch up, and Trojans said And speaking of another team that almost lost but was able to pull it out, Murray State, because I think Murray State, they just edge out Southeast Missouri State, and they know. I'm sure they know that the only way they're going to get in the tournament is by winning the Ohio Valley this weekend. So they're undefeated. They're finishing the season undefeated in the regular season undefeated in the Ohio Valley, but they need to win the tournament if they want to get in the tournament. So the big tournament, the big dance. So I'm sure hopefully they'll get together there because they've had a couple little struggles lately, but hopefully they can keep it themselves together for the tournament, for the Ohio Valley Conference tournament. Alabama beat South Carolina by 19. So a couple of big wins there by some bubble teams. Virginia Tech beats Miami. Miami, they're really right there on the bubble. So that might derail their bubble chances. That loss. Seton Hall beat Xavier. So Seton Hall, that should help their bubble chances. Xavier, not so much. They've kind of been in a free fall the last few weeks. Looking for some other bubble teams. Of course, we talked about Loyola in the previous segment. So Arizona State, trying to get on the bubble. They beat Utah. So also too, you want to give a shout out to Chicago State. They beat the number 1 team in the WAC. They beat New Mexico State via buzzer beater on Saturday.
Yay!
Yeah, they're starting to kind of get it together there with Chicago State. They got a new AD there. This win should help them sort of propel them. There perhaps maybe hopes of maybe adding a football team, perhaps. The AD really wants to do that, explore that. So hopefully now that they've got a guy there that actually cares about the athletic programs there, hopefully this will be the start of something big.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that school on the south side, 95th and King Drive. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, the Monday edition. I'm Sid, this is Lakeena. As we continue to talk college basketball, Lakeena, a couple more scores to pass along from Sunday's action. Ohio State loses to Maryland 75-60. The Houston Cougars ranked number 14th in the country. They defeated SMU 75-61. In number 21, UConn, that was the first game of that CBS triple header yesterday before the Illini and Michigan game. They beat Georgetown 86-77. Patrick Ewing's future is in doubt at Georgetown. Of course, we talked about his struggles with that program both on and off the court. Of course, last year they won the Big East tournament before bowing out to Colorado in the first round of that tournament, or the big tournament last year.
Well, like I said, we talked about it earlier. Like I said, a couple of the players that actually were a big part of that that Big East tourney run, they left. So now you're kind of stuck. And I know some Georgetown fans are kind of getting impatient, but look, I mean, it's kind of out of his control in this case. So this is sort of like a puzzle season for them. So you never know. They're Indiana hoping to keep their tourney hopes alive. They beat Minnesota by 5. Temple trying to keep their tourney hopes alive. They beat Tulane by 5 as well. Also, Memphis just hammering Wichita State, so helping with their tourney chances. Also, too, Nebraska beats Penn State after getting the vote of confidence from Trev Alberts over at the for Fred Hoiberg. So hopefully, I'm surprised that it hasn't been. I thought maybe he'd be doing better over there at Nebraska. Hopefully he's getting another shot to do it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Now, Lakeena, let's go through the schedule for this week in the top 25 in college basketball, starting with tonight's games, which is Monday, the last day of February. At 7 o'clock on the Big Ten Network, Northwestern, the Wildcats, 13 and 14, they'll travel to Iowa to take on the Hawkeyes. The Hawkeyes are ranked number 24 in the country. At 8 o'clock on ESPN, we'll have number 21 Texas. The Longhorns will host number 3 Baylor Bears. Baylor, of course, is the defending national champs. They're coming off their upset win at home against Kansas on Saturday. Will this be a trap game for Baylor? It better not be, because they still have a tough one in conference against Texas. At the same time on ESPN2, Kansas State will travel to Texas Tech to take on the Red Raiders. Texas Tech is ranked number 12 in the country. And at 10 o'clock on ESPN2, number 17, UCLA will face the Washington Huskies.
That's a makeup game from about 2 months ago, I think, right before the Christmas holiday, which UCLA, they had to shut down for like almost a month due to COVID issues. San Diego State and Wyoming, that's at 8 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Mountain West Conference could give 3 teams in, because this could be an elimination game for one of these teams. So there's going to definitely be a barn burner down in Laramie tonight. You guys can check that out on CBS Sports Network. Now, going into Tuesday's game, this should be a big one here on FS1. You got Providence and Villanova. This could be for the Big East title. I am super excited for this game. That should be a lot of fun. There's a 6:30, that's 5:30, I should say, on FS1, so it's a little bit early for you guys. Tennessee and Georgia, that's at the same time on SEC Network. Dayton and Richmond. Now, if you guys don't know too much about Dayton, they're a really good, veteran team coached by Anthony Grant. They look like they're trying to get into that bubble in the A10, so that should be a fun one. Ole Miss and number 7 Kentucky. I'm sure Kentucky's going to want to get that loss against God on their mouth.
I'll be shocked that this game was not a blowout.
Yeah, they're definitely going to take down on Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss is trying to get into a tournament too, but I don't think the Wildcats are going to be in a very good mood. Nebraska and Ohio State, that's at 6 o'clock on the Big Ten Network.
This should be another blowout too.
Yeah. West Virginia and Oklahoma, they need this win to kind of keep up, right there on the right side of the bubble here. Louisville, Virginia Tech. A big one here on ESPN at 10 o'clock tomorrow. You got USC hosting Arizona. This could definitely be very well for the number 1 seed in the Pac-12 conference tournament next week. So that should be a fun one.
Yeah, let's see if Arizona can bounce back. Also, at 7 o'clock on the ACC Network, number 4 Duke will travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Panthers. At 7 p.m. on the Big 12/ESPN Plus, number 6 Kansas will take on TCU. That should be TCU is actually a good team at 18-9, but Kansas, as we mentioned, they lost at Baylor on Saturday night by 10. This should be another good one, but I expect the Jayhawks to bounce back in this one. At 8 o'clock on ESPN tomorrow, number 8 Purdue will travel to Madison, Wisconsin to take on the 10th ranked Wisconsin Badgers. Illini fans will be watching this game, because if Wisconsin loses, I believe Illinois will move up to number 2. If I have my predictions correct.
It's all like weird, like,
Yeah.
percentage points. Wisconsin is ahead in the win column, so that's
Hmm.
why. And of course, Purdue losing, so they're both kind of like there's a large jam there. So this is definitely one of those games where it could definitely be the elimination of who gets that one seed. If Purdue still has a shot at that one seed as well, a lot has to happen too. Yes, Illinois would be number one should the Boilermakers lose. Boilermakers beat the Badgers. So that should be a fun one over at the Kohl Center on ESPN. Also, Cincy and Houston. Houston trying to improve their seating, if you will. So that should be a fun one over there in Houston. Now going into Wednesday's game here. Not really too much. Like I said before, there's a lot of conference tournaments on the smaller conference tournaments. Texas A&M and Alabama, 6 o'clock on the SEC network. Georgetown, Seton Hall, CBS Sports Network. Notre Dame and Florida State. Florida State trying to get back into the right side of the bubble. That's at 6 o'clock on ESPN2. Rutgers and Indiana. This is probably going to be an elimination game as well. That's on Big Ten Network at 6. UConn and Creighton 7:30 on FS1. Creighton trying to get back into that bubble. LSU and Arkansas. Those are always fun when these two teams play each other in hoops. 8 o'clock on ESPN2.
I think LSU needs that game more, and of course Arkansas had that big win against Kentucky on Saturday, but I think LSU needs this game a little bit more.
They do. Marquette and DePaul, CBS Sports Network at 8 o'clock. Stephen F. Austin, New Mexico State. I feel bad for Stephen F. Austin because New Mexico State's not going to be in a very good mood after losing to Chicago State. So I'm just saying, Minnesota and Maryland at 8 o'clock on BTN, and Miami. They really need this win against Boston College. They want to get back into the right side of the bubble, and also Miami and UNLV as well at 9:30 on FS1. So the Mountain West, getting some love again. That's always great to see.
And let's wrap up the college basketball schedule, reviewing the games coming up on Thursday. As we mentioned, the Missouri Valley Conference tournament will start in St. Louis on Thursday. But the big time teams are winding down their regular seasons. We'll have number 14 Houston hosting Temple on Thursday, 6 p.m. on ESPN2. The Fighting Illini, ranked number 20, ranked at number 20 on the season. They'll host Penn State on FS1 at 6 o'clock. That should be a blowout win for Illinois. I'm predicting that here on the show. At the same time on ESPN, the big ESPN. This should be a good one in the Big Ten. Ohio State, ranked number 23 in the country. They'll host Michigan State at 6 o'clock. Ohio State 18-8, Michigan State 19-9. At 7 o'clock on the Big 12/ESPN Plus network, number 6 Kansas will host TCU. At 8 p.m. on ESPN2, number 2 Arizona will host Stanford. And at 8 o'clock on FS1 on Thursday, Michigan will host number 24 Iowa.
Should be a lot of fun there. Like I said, a lot of the smaller conferences are starting their tournaments, on Thursday. So you got the Ohio Valley, you got the Missouri Valley, you got all these other smaller conferences. Also to Oregon and Washington. Oregon really needs this win. They want to stay right there on the bubble. And Fresno State and San Diego State. If San Diego State can win that tournament to keep themselves right there in line on the bubble, that's at 10 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. So some really, like I said before, you got a lot of teams that are going to be jockeying for those bubble teams and such. So this is last week of the season, folks. So again, there's some big games coming up this weekend. We'll get to that on Friday, but really big games for a lot of bubble teams this week, Sid.
Yes, like we mentioned before, this is March Madness time. We're heading down the home stretch. So this is what we like about college basketball this time of year, Lakeena. Who can get hot? Are there any injuries that are big factors for some of these teams? Who can take advantage? Who can be consistent? And we love to see some upsets. So this is why this is the best time of year in college basketball. You're listening to Second City Sports live on the Monday, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, that's Lakeena. We're live in the 11 color. Lakeena, we have a couple minutes left before we break. We have to break for the bottom of the hour. I want to ask you, who are your top 4 teams in college basketball right now that has a legitimate shot of winning the national title?
Well, like I said, there's good like 12 teams that can probably get in, but I would say the favorites right now, right this minute. Like I said, this could change. Arizona, I think Gonzaga may have a shot, and also to Kentucky, if they can get it together and be consistent, and like I said, Duke. And But also to remember, there are like 12 teams, like 12, maybe 15 teams. There really is no dominant team like it was last year, where it was Baylor and Gonzaga. You put them on whatever order. But this year it's pretty much wide open. So if you catch a team at a bad, having a bad day, or if somebody gets hot suddenly, this is sort of one of those years where someone can sneak in there and perhaps maybe win the title. Who knows? Could have Villanova sneak in there? Could maybe perhaps Illinois, maybe, or a team like that, maybe in Arkansas, or maybe there are a lot. Look, Texas, maybe. I mean, look, there are a lot of chances for a lot of teams, and like I said, Purdue, one of those teams, Alabama, you never know what you're gonna get with them. Could they can go to the Final Four, but they could lose, like I said, in the early round. So it's sort of one of those things where you just want to, there's a lot of teams that have a shot to win, the championship, and like you can't wait to kind of like get back into it. Houston could probably get in there too as well. They had a taste of it a couple of years ago, going to the Final Four. So it's definitely one of those things where you're kind of like, okay, who really has a shot to win this?
And I think this is kind of cool in a way. We always talk about the big teams with Kansas, Duke, and North Carolina. Shout out PD Popolo. But we always talk about those big time schools that usually are the first schools to have the best shot of winning the title. But I think in a way this is great for NCAA to have. This is a parity that you wanted. You have it now. I know Duke is a good team this year. I know that Coach K will be hanging them up at the end of the season. We know that Hubert Davis is trying to keep that North Carolina program afloat. I think they'll be better next year as he gets some of his own guys in there. But this is a second year in a row in my lifetime that Duke and North Carolina are not mentioned out of people's mouths as the favorites to win it. Now, I think it's a great thing. You need to have a change at the top of the guard every once in a while.
Well, I think Duke has a shot. Of course, that being Coach K's last season, I think they still got a shot to win. North Carolina, I mean, like you said, I think next year, I think this is sort of a leftover from this year. He's got, Hubert Davis got some big time recruits coming in. So next year, I think will probably be the year. We'll see how John Shire does once he takes over at Duke. But like I said, I mean, there are like a whole lot of teams you can probably say that have a legitimate shot. Like I said, there's a good 12 to 15 teams. And like I said, there's going to be some bubble teams that are going to have something to say. Could a Murray State perhaps sneak in there? Could maybe, look, Vermont from the American East. I mean, could they perhaps maybe make a nice little run? They only have 4 losses this year. Oh, Colgate, they're back in the mix. You got a lot of sleeper teams, especially in the smaller conference, that could perhaps maybe be a potential Cinderella. So there's still a lot to be decided, a lot to be written. So a lot of things can, and also the Jackrabbits are back. South Dakota State, they're Jackrabbits. They could probably perhaps be recommended should they get in from the Summit League. So there's a lot of teams, and then this one thing I love about this time of year. Yes, it sucks because about a month from now, college season will be over with. But this is sort of what makes it great, though. You get to the other predictability of it. That's probably the best part about it.
Coming up, we'll have our continuing coverage of the NFL. Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals, are they headed for a divorce? And yours truly has a trade proposal for the Monsters of the Midway. We'll give our tribute to the late great head coach Dick Versace and our Black History moment to wrap up the show for today.
And don't forget too, more sports media news. A lot of weird things. The NFL media carousel is continuing.
Yes, all that and more coming up right here on Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. Don't move a muscle.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Throws it, foul line left. Count it! Foul! DeMar DeRozan with the hoop, the harm, and one.
Bulls Radio with the call. 112-108 the win over the Hawks last night. Chicago 39-21 with the win. DeMar DeRozan 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Nikola Vukovic with a double-double. Nice night for Zach LaVine with 20 points. The Bulls host the Grizzlies tomorrow night. Chicago on top of the Eastern Conference by a half game over the Heat. Wins in 7 of 10 and 6 in a row. The Blackhawks are winless in 3. They're back at it tonight hosting the Devils. Chicago's last game was Sunday, a 5-2 home loss against Florida. College hoops last night, number 22 Ohio State with an 86-83 win at number 15 Illinois. The Illini are 12-5, second in the Big Ten, chasing Wisconsin and Purdue. They're both 13-4. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can save just by being you. DriveWise in the Allstate mobile app gives you personalized driving feedback, and by adding it to your policy, you can save for driving safe just by being yourself. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings based on DriveWise and other safe driving discounts. Savings vary. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Got a party of 10 coming in, and we need to flip those 2 tables.
Leah's restaurant is fully booked night after night.
Section 3 is still behind.
She no longer has reservations about finally finding a hostess.
Why doesn't 23 have menus? Oh, because they're in my hand.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on the Monday edition, our last show for the month of February on Black History Month on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena here with you. If you have a question or comment for us during any of our topics during today's 2-hour extravaganza, we have less than a half hour left. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, we talked about this story last week as it broke. Kyler Murray, the star quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. He played in his first playoff game this past season before being defeated by the now Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. Of course, he scrubbed all the Arizona Cardinals paraphernalia and pictures off his social media. Now things have taken a turn for the worse. What do you have for us?
Yeah, apparently his agent wrote a very lengthy statement earlier this morning. I didn't read the whole thing because I just felt that I was getting, it just wasn't. I kind of feel basically what he said, the agent, I should say, basically what he said was that he wants, Kyler to get his money, make sure he gets his cash, and that he's played a lot. Eric Burkhart, who's Kyler Murray's agent, he wrote. I didn't read the whole thing because it's long. You can read it. It's on social media too. I know Adam Schefter and Rappaport both have it, so feel free. He wants he wants to be an Arizona Cardinal. He wants to be, but he wants to be played like it. So I guess his discipline is being called into question, and it's just silly at this point. I'm kind of like. Look, there's a lot of questions about, the team as a whole. Steve Keim, who's a GM, and there was some question about some of his moves that he's made the last few years. Cliff Kingsbury is being, thrown into question. It's not just Murray. I mean, that whole organization is being kind of, being called into question because, they had a big, year. They were the only undefeated team for a few weeks in the season. But then, the last 6 weeks, they just ran out of gas. And, unfortunately, we saw what happened against St. Louis. I mean, the Rams. I mean, in that divisional round, it just, Kyler just, he was being thrown around like a rag doll. That Rams defense. So it's one of those things where you're just like, what? I mean, hopefully, I'm sure they'll figure it out. But I just think it's silly that this is being called out in front of for everybody to listen to. It just seems a little bit silly.
Yeah, and the way that these players are going about it, I know they had this power of social media behind them. They can use that as a powerful tool, as we seen, excuse me, throughout these across the sports landscape. But I think Kyler Murray will eventually get his way. Now, will he say with the Arizona Cardinals? I don't know. It depends on how well they do it. Should they get back to the playoffs next season in a couple of years ahead of that before his rookie contract runs out? So I think Kyler Murray will eventually get his way. But as I said before in our last couple of episodes, I think he's getting bad advice from some of his handlers around him. That's just my what my gut's telling me.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is too, and I think that's always been the issue for him. He was at Oklahoma, so some people he was perhaps maybe thinking about playing baseball, and I just think his handlers are just not a very good just isn't a very good showing. And again, we'll see. I'm sure they'll get it together eventually because usually this is what happens. Because if they don't pick up his 5th-year option, I'm sure they're going to put him on the franchise tag. You don't want to do that, so
that's a nightmare for players.
Yeah, so I'm sure they'll figure it out. I'm sure he'll get his money, and I'm sure they're going to try to get it to conduce to the fact that they got to get more players. more O-line help, another, secondary guy, a more more, front seven guy. So Arizona's got some, holes they got to fill. So, and I'm sure that, we'll see if I'm sure they'll take care of Kyler at some point, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Before we get to our NFL media news that you have for us, Lakeena, I just saw this on television on ESPN. Of course, you know that the NFL will be playing 5 games internationally next year, including a couple in the UK, in London. Of course, one of those teams is the Green Bay Packers, and I just saw a picture. You go look for it on social media. It features head coach Matt LaFleur and a couple of other the star defensive players. Left off that promo tweet, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams.
Well, if you saw the video from earlier this morning, they actually had, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were actually pretty prevalent in that promo. So I guess they want to kind of.
I didn't see that, obviously.
Yeah, this is like really early this morning. You probably got to go back to like 8:30 this morning, but our time. But yeah, I mean, I think they want to kind of wait and see, just in case. Sort of like, the Abbey Road. That was like an Abbey Road sort of thing from the Beatles, and that album.
Yeah.
And we'll get into all. Won't get too deep into it. That's basically that's sort of like a play from that. But I think they want to make sure that they want to end up with egg on their faces in case one or both those guys don't come back. Talking about Rodgers and Adams. So that's probably why they played it safe and just, let's get Matt LaFleur and a couple of defensive guys on there and just do it that way. But I remember, the NFL, I mean, they want to get back into Europe, with everything, supposedly getting back to normal. Also to New Orleans will also be part of that London series at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And Jacksonville as well. Also, they're going to be playing some games in Germany as well. Arizona will, or in Germany, in Munich. Tampa Bay, who actually broke news themselves just about an hour ago, they're going back to the creamsicle uniforms for a little bit next season. So, okay. Because it was weird that they didn't have much success when they had the creamsicles. I mean, they went to the playoffs a couple of times in the late 70s and in the 80s, but they really didn't get into it until they changed their logos and the colors. But I digress. Also, Arizona, the aforementioned Arizona Cardinals will be playing that series in Mexico. So other teams and games will be decided as well as the season releases their TV scheduling for 2022. But those are sort of like the main 5 for that has been released already.
Yeah, usually those schedules are released right after the NFL draft, so we'll be looking out for that. So as we mentioned before, the NFL always keeps their product in the headlines even during the off season. And let's get to some more media news, Lakeena. And it looks like ESPN is trying to not ESPN, but Amazon's trying to find anybody to break bread with them to call their Thursday night package.
Yeah, they're now set their sights on top college football analyst for ABC ESPN, Kirk Herbstreit. Now, he does have something in his contract where he can actually call NFL games, in other entities. So I don't know, but that's a lot of travel, though. I know his boys are older. I think like 3 of them are now in college. So that's not really a factor. His family is a lot older, but that's still a lot of travel, and you got to prepare for the Thursday night thing. You have to turn right around and travel, do game day, and perhaps do whatever. Especially if the game day and the main college football, the Saturday night game, or the game of the week is not in a different city. That's a lot of travel. So I don't know if Herbie would want to do that, but someone said, I forgot to get the tweet out, but somebody said like give some of the lesser guys a chance, but. I guess, look, Amazon's trying to swing high. They swung and missed on Troy Aikman. They're trying to get Al Michaels to come in, and such. And now they're setting their sights on, Herbstreit. So it's Amazon, they're trying, but it doesn't like they're succeeding so far.
Yeah, and we talked about on our show last Friday, it's like Fox will have a similar problem on their hands as well. They could go in-house into who's going to be the number 1 color guy next to Joe Buck. Will it be Sean Payton? I don't think it's going to be Sean McVay because he's going to return to coaching next year for the LA Rams. But will they go in-house, or will they go to Sean McVay, or not Sean McVay, Sean Payton, or will they go somewhere else that we haven't heard of before? Will it be a recent player that has retired? Who knows? But it's a big carousel going around the NFL broadcasting media.
Yeah, and I understand why ESPN did what they did, bringing in Troy Aikman. They want to get those marquee games, especially with the new TV contract kicks in next season. You got Troy Aikman, whoever they pair him with, whether it's Al Michaels or Joe Buck or whoever, but they want to try to get that
Mm-hmm.
more quality games, and I get it. Like I said, I'm sure they'll probably keep Steve Levy, Brian Greasy, and Lewis Rigg in some capacity. Perhaps maybe do some of their college football, games to be that 1A, 1B team with Herb Street and with Chris Fowler. So there's still a lot to figure out, but this is sort of exciting. I know that the NFL offseason is exciting, but it's also too in the media sense because with Aikman, it's not official yet. It probably won't be official for maybe like another few weeks or so. But once that's official, the dominoes are going to start falling. And now there's a rumor out there that maybe they'll probably put Greg Olsen, promote him to number 2 team with Joe Buck. That's not a bad idea, but it'll be interesting to see what Fox does. Fox got not a lot of depth of talent, so we'll see that's something they got to figure out.
You listen to Second City Sports, the Monday edition, our last show for the month of February, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live and living in color. Sid, Lakeena are here with you as we talk about news surrounding the sports media world. Lakeena, this comes to our good friends at Awful Announcing. This we didn't get a chance to touch on this last week, but NBA local ratings are up in the 21-22 season, led by the Warriors, Cavaliers, and 76ers. Our Chicago Bulls locally are doing well in that group.
Yeah, the Bulls are playing well, and if you win, they'll come, and that's what they've done. And look, I think that Adam Amin and Stacey King, do a great job together. I love their chemistry together, and
yes,
and I think and also to the teams winning, so I think that helps the Warriors.
That's the ultimate thing, yeah.
Yeah, the Warriors, of course, excited as they are now that they're Clay's back on and everything else, and they're still playing pretty well. What's it like in Phoenix? Because I'm sure their rates got to be up there too for the Suns.
Yeah, I can't find that chart, but it was surprising to me that the Suns weren't as up there or near the top like the Bulls and the Warriors are. But just quoting part of this article, overall this season, total viewership on the regional sports networks is up 10% overall to 1.028 million viewers, though up less impressive 5% when compared to the same amount of games. Last year's total viewership of 931,530 viewers continued a slide since the 2015-2016 season, when the NBA's local viewership was at a reported 1.41 million viewers. The 5 highest rated local markets are Golden State, 7.3, Cleveland, 3.74, Philadelphia, 2.72 is going to go up now with James Harden being on the team. In Milwaukee, 2.61 million viewers, and Chicago at 2.52 million viewers. Yeah, and also Phoenix. Here's your answer, Lakeena. Phoenix, not traditionally a great market for the NBA. They're up 55% at a 7.12 local rating.
They're winning. That's why. I think that's probably the big reason why those ratings are up. And also the same thing with Cleveland. I think but I think Cleveland's they have a pretty loyal fan base. So.
Yes.
And they're winning as well. So I know they've struggled a couple of, for the first few games coming back from the break. But, winning usually helps, especially in the big cities. It's always better when Chicago and New York. I know New York's ratings are kind of have fallen flat, so as the Los Angeles ratings as well. So, look, I think, like I said, I think, winning helps. I think, the top 5, I'm sure Philly, I'm sure those ratings will probably be up to now that James Harden's in the fold now. And look, we'll see Brooklyn's ratings. We'll see how their ratings are once, Durant comes back and they're winning. So it'll be interesting, though, especially in this last, month and a half of the season.
And speaking of the New York Knicks, their games on MSG are up 21% to a 1.43 local rating. It has increased 74% over the last 2 seasons. Of course, last year, the Knicks had a surprising season. Ranked, they finished at number 4 in the Eastern Conference playoffs before getting bounced by Atlanta in the first round. Of course, this year they are struggling, but those fans are still coming out to their games and apparently watching them on MSG.
I think New York. I think the Bulls, their ratings were still pretty good too, even though they had some of their worst games. So it's sort of one of those things where, I think people just watch it out of habit. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So there's your sports media news for the day right here on Second City Sports, live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena, before we get to our Black History Fact to close out the show, one former coach passed away over the weekend, and his name was Dick Versace. For those of you old school Chicago sports fans like us and older than us, you remember you remember this name. Dick Versace passed away over the weekend on February 25th. He passed away at the age of 81. He was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina on April 16th, 1940. He was the first American of Puerto Rican descent to have coached in the National Basketball Association. Here's his coaching history from 1964 to 1998. 1965 to 1969, St. Joseph High School. 69 through 73, Gordon Tech. University of St. Louis, 73-74, he was an assistant. Michigan State, 74 through 78. Of course, the University of Bradley, 1978 to 1986. Of course, 86 through 88, he was assistant on those early bad boys teams, the Detroit Pistons, under the late great head coach Chuck Daly. Of course, 1988 through 1990, he was the Indiana Pacers head coach, and he was a Milwaukee Bucks assistant from 1996 through 1998. He is a three-time Missouri Valley regular season champion coach, 1980, 82, and 86. Two-time Missouri Valley Conference Tournament champion, 1980 and 1986. And he was the two-time Missouri Valley Coach of the Year, 1980 and 1986. Of course, Lakeena, we remember him doing great work on NBA radio back in the day. And he was doing Turner Sports during their NBA coverage. And he was on locally here on Channel 5 WMAQ TV Chicago with the great Martin Jean Greco and John Kelly during those Bulls playoff games on NBC. Those were good times. I really enjoyed this analysis.
Yeah, and also, if you remember, all you Bradley fans remember those three. They went to the tournament twice during his era. I believe Hersey Hawkins was a part of one of those teams, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yes,
he coached, he was some pretty good NBA talent. Of course, he went on to play, by the way, about 10 years in the NBA. So he ended up having to start 10, 12 years in the NBA. So yeah, Hersey Hawkins had a really solid career. I think he was one of those guys. Look, he broke the mold because he was the first coach of Puerto Rican descent to coach in the NBA. And look, Gordon Tech, I think they won a state title during that time he was there. I'm not mistaken. Again, you gotta go all the way back. This is like going all the way back in the 70s. So I can't go that far back. But he had a really good resume, and I think his analysis are really good, especially during those Bulls championships where he was a big part of that. And I think I was kind of shocked, because I didn't hear about that. There's no cause of death. He was only 81 years old when he passed away, but he lived a very full life. Rich in basketball. If you heard some of the interviews that he did, he loved. He lived and breathed basketball. So I know that Bradley. I know that Bradley did something for him like last week after when it happened. It was not too long before that, after their game, when the news broke about his death. And it was one of those things where he coached in all levels. He was successful in all levels. He was a great analyst. He was part of the Turner's inception once they got going into the NBA coverage.
Yes.
So it was, he definitely kind of, trailblazed all around and was successful at all levels of his coaching. So he will be missed. His analysis was very simple, but also to the point. So.
Yes.
Get this very simple, and he's definitely going to be missed by a lot of basketball, old basketball junkies like us who loved his analysis.
He had that world famous Q-tip hairstyle as well.
Yes.
I know people made fun of it, but he brought it when it came to analysis, especially on Channel 5 locally here in Chicago during those Bulls championship runs. He was a no nonsense guy. He was like Norm. He was a poor man's version of the late Norm Van Leer. He told it like it was. He really didn't get into confrontations with a whole lot of people, unlike Norm Van Leer, but they were true to who they were. And like you say, he made it simple, like Kenny Smith does on TNT now. He made it simple where you can understand without insulting your intelligence. And I think what many analysts are missing today. We know that you played the game. We know you know the terminology of the players that are going on. Just break it down for the fans watching at home without insulting the fans' intelligence, because they don't know the stuff that goes on behind the scenes like you do.
Yeah, the complexities of it, he definitely peeled the layers off a lot of that stuff. So, like I said, he kept it simple. I loved his hair, like you said, the Q-tip hair. I know that became his niche, though, too. And he said he liked it, so that became, like I said, that became kind of his niche, like you said. So he's definitely a guy that's going to be missed by a lot of basketball fans, especially from the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Once cable started becoming more readily available, and once everything else started kind of falling into place, TNT started doing the basketball NBA coverage and such. So he was really good at that.
Yeah, and also did some Atlanta Hawks games too on TBS. Of course, in the 90s, they went back and forth. I'm talking about TBS between broadcast a certain number, the small amount of Hawks games, and then of course later in the 90s, they went back to the NBA. He was part of the Atlanta Hawks coverage on TBS as well, so he did a great job. So, Dick Versace, you will be missed, and your legacy will live on forever. Lakeena, let's end on a high note with our Black History moment for our last show for Black History Month. You're gonna love this, just like everybody else is gonna love this. If you're a big fan of music and a big fan of the history of music, you should know this album. Whether you're our age, older, slightly younger, you've heard of this. This album has been referenced in pop culture from many times over. And I saw something regarding the commercial of this artist that I posted on my Insta stories the other day. I'm talking about the late great Michael Jackson, the Thriller album from 1982 going into 1983. Yes, sirree.
They just celebrated the anniversary of the release of that last night. So
yes,
the anniversary, it was been what, 37 years since. Jesus,
yes, the greatest selling album of all time. No matter what anybody else says, is an official statistic. The greatest selling album of all time. What were some of the songs of that album? Most of us know, but for some of you that don't know, now you know. Want to be starting something? Classic. Baby Be Mine.
Yes.
The Girl Is Mine. The Doggone Girl Is Mine featured Paul McCartney. Yes, for all you steppers out there. Yes, for all you steppers out there. And it's a great music video to that as well. Of course, Thriller, another great music video as well. Beat It, another great music video as well. Billie Jean, that was the first video that got played on MTV as far as a black male solo artist.
Already black artists in general. Because if you remember, if you go back to some of those early 80s, MTV, once it, became, they did not play, they played mostly rock music and, that type of music and pop music. They didn't show a lot of black artists, and he kind of broke the mold. So remember that, folks.
Yeah. Remember the first black group overall was played on MTV with Shalimar. The first black man, solo artist was Michael Jackson. That was the Billie Jean video. Human Nature, of course. If you guys know your music from the 90s, SWV sampled that.
They sampled that, yep.
Also to PYT, Pretty Young Thing, great party record right there. And the Lady in My Life for all you late night heads out there. That became another signature song from this album later on in his career. So we pay him tribute to the late great Michael Jackson to wrap up our tribute for Black History Month right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. The great Michael Jackson Thriller.
Yeah, it won multiple Grammys. It won American Music Awards, and basically just about every award you can think of. That album is almost 40 years old now. It'll be 40 years old next year. So Jesus.
I know, just as old as us.
It makes your head spin there, but yeah, very nicely done. Sid. A great way to cap off Black History Month with our little FYIs here for you folks. We still got a few more minutes, Sid. Anything else sort of, catches your attention before we disperse?
Just real quick, before we close it out, going back to the Michael Jackson, I was watching a documentary. I forgot which documentary it was. There's been so many done on him over the years. Yeah. But they interviewed his mother, Catherine, and she said, remember Michael Jackson's first solo album, Off the Wall, which was released in 1979. It had trouble gaining momentum on the pop charts. It did well on the R&B charts, but it didn't win as many awards as he thought he would be. His mother said Michael Jackson told her and told other people that next year when I come back to these award shows, I'm gonna win them all. And of course, that next year was the Thriller album, which came out in late 82, early 83. Of course, as you mentioned, he swept all the awards, the Grammys, the American Music Awards, any other award shows that were out at the time. He won all the major categories for that album. Of course, the Soul Train awards weren't out back then. They came out late. That's, of course, that award show got created and started in 87. But all the major award shows, any award, he was just a man at that time. And it was a great album.
Yeah, I think that's sort of, I don't think any other album has touched that album, especially with the commercial success and perhaps even the award success too. Multiple songs, were in the top 10. I think half of them were number one. Some cases were for multiple weeks. So I think for all those folks who want to say that, oh, he's not one of the best ever, I think y'all need to go back and listen to that album, because you can see why a lot of those songs became big hits. And one some people even joke that during those, next year's, that next year's Grammys and American Music Awards, basically called it, well, Michael, wasn't it nice of Michael Jackson to invite everybody for his awards invitational or something like that?
Exactly.
So, it was just hilarious. But yeah, so it was definitely, and also too, if you guys get a chance, check out the I'm sure they're going to repeat at some point. Unsung, they're going to be dedicating. They dedicate music to like the 70s and the 80s. I don't know if they're gonna.
I saw part of it last night. I gotta watch the rest of it.
Watch
But the few minutes I saw, the ones on the 80s, the decade of the 80s, it was very good. Of course, next week, I know we'll remind you guys again on Friday, but next Sunday on TV1, the new season of Unsung will begin with Soul for Real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been looking forward. I already got that day recorded. I've been looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
I hope, hopefully they're doing well. I know, because I've been clamoring for them to, be on Unsung. So hopefully, hopefully they're doing well. I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah.
I've never recorded.
Yeah. So look out for that. But I will be watching because last night they aired the decade of the 70s and the decade of the 80s. Like I said, I saw a few minutes of the decade of the 80s. And from what I saw, it was very good. They just didn't talk about the music, even though music was a central theme, but they talked about what was going on society-wise at that time.
Right.
Of course, with the Central Park 5 and the crack epidemic and things along that line.
Yeah, they kind of did. I was a little surprised they didn't do like any more like TV, because that was sort of when however you feel about the Cosby Show now and such. The other TV shows that kind of took off thanks in part to the Cosby Show and Different World and that and all in that that family. But I can't wait. Like I said, I can't wait to watch it. Like I said, we went a little serious with some of the stuff with the hairstyles and the other things that went on. So, but even still, nonetheless, but I'm sure they did a really nice job as they usually do on Unsung. So it's a battle. But it's gonna be very interesting. But I can't wait for the new season Unsung this season. They got some great artists. They're gonna be profiling. So you guys make sure you guys check that out on TV1. I'm sure they'll repeat it. I'm sure. Just check over the listings, your TV area. Now our last one before we take off, Sid, Patrick Kane's showing that he still got it. He had a hat trick a couple of nights ago. And also Brandon Hagel also had a hat trick as well. The first time that a Hawks team has had a first pair hat trick since 2003. So, the second this year, of course, next to Pittsburgh. So, and it looks like they're on their way of naming a new GM. So yeah, hopefully maybe this will be the start of maybe things turning. Just your Rocky words, don't say another freaking word. That's all I'm gonna say.
I'll say this about the new Hawks management team. Also, to John Weideman, the radio voice of the Chicago Blackhawks. His workload will be cut back next year, so he won't be doing the radio full time. Unfortunately, I know with new people coming in, they want their own new personalities, things along that line. Of course, we know that this is Pat Foley's last season, but I'm just shaking my head. Like I said, John Wyman is one of the best hockey radio voices in the NHL, and for the way they're doing him, the way they're doing Pat Foley is just ridiculous. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, look, I get it. You want to like younger, talent, and like I said, we're not.
And they do have young, talented people over there. That's the thing. You can't knock the talent, but just the way they're going about it.
The way they're treating the older guards, like
exactly,
you said, like the Foley's and the John Wymans. I mean, I love that call when he called those 3 Stanley Cups for the Blackhawks. It's some of the best.
Yes,
and I especially that weird goal, the first one with Kaner. I don't think they found that puck yet. But. Yeah, I mean, it just I don't know. Like, wrap us up.
Yeah. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to War on Anchor to catch the Second City Sports podcast. And you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Make sure you catch Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday, live in living color, noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as you young folks would say. Catch Second City Sports live and in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And, guys, I know it's starting to warm up here, folks. So, but still, keep warm, everybody. And look, I know they lifted the mask mandates and such, but I'm still wearing my mask. So please still wear your mask, folks.
Respect each other, whether you wear a mask or not.
Yeah, wash your hands. And like Sid said, be good to each other. For Sid, I'm Lakeena. This is Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. And we'll be, doing more stuff coming up this month. So we'll stay right, you guys better stay right there. And we'll see you Friday.
Doppels, holla!